Hey everyone, welcome to the Limitless Legal Nurse Consulting Podcast. I have my wonderful guest, Maria, here today. Thank you, Maria, so much for joining me. I appreciate you being here.
Thank you for having me. This is fun. Nice little thing to
Absolutely.
do.
Absolutely. I can't wait to get into, getting to know you a little bit more about you, about your business, and for everyone to get to hear that piece of it.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about where you're at right now. Where are you coming from? What part of the
I am
country are you
in
in?
New Orleans, Louisiana. I say New Orleans because I'm in a little tiny suburb, but I border New Orleans on both sides. So it's actually, we don't have counties, we have parishes. So I'm actually in St.
Mhm.
Bernard Parish, which borders Orleans Parish, and I grew up pretty much right on the border of Orleans and St. Bernard. So it's a very interesting place to live.
So you so you're in the South. You've always lived there. Have you lived anywhere else besides for there?
Very briefly, I lived in this metro area my whole life, but I did very briefly live in a suburb of Atlanta, Georgia, right after Hurricane Katrina. I was
Mhm.
displaced for about 6 months. Some of my family stayed there a little bit longer, but I was ready to come home. I'm like, get me out of
Oh
here.
yeah.
I have things to do.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Yeah.
hindsight, maybe I probably should stay, but I was at that age and like, you're not gonna tell me that I have to leave New Orleans. I'm gonna leave when I'm good and ready. So
Right, right,
just
right.
came right back.
Invincible. Yeah.
I wasn't ready to
Yeah.
go.
Oh. Okay, so you've basically for the most part been in the same area most of your time.
Mhm.
Um so how long have you been a nurse?
So I became a nurse in 2010.
Mhm.
So almost it would be the end of the year. So almost 14 years now. Math is mathing.
Yeah,
Um,
right.
I started the journey probably in 2009. Right around 2009, late 2008, because I had some prerequisites to do. I already had a bachelor's degree in psychology, which just happened to be the most interesting major. I had changed my major so many times, but so I was able to get into this like accelerated nursing program. It was 10 months to your associate, and so there was like about 3 semesters of prerequisites that I had to do to get into nursing school, and then a couple of I just got in, and it was 10 months to RN, which was like, oh my god.
Yeah.
So then about
Okay, so
yeah.
let's back up. So I love hearing the story, the schooling story. I think probably mostly I love hearing it is because my kids are going through this process of,
Oh, okay.
going to college and setting up their plan for for their life. And for me, it was many, many years ago.
Hmm.
Um, so I love to hear how people got there. So your psychology degree, where did you go to school for your psychology degree?
I went to school at the University of New Orleans.
Okay.
it- right out of high school, I did not make good decisions. I had a full scholarship that I did not keep. And so I found myself kind of in a situation where it's like I have to just I didn't realize that you drop so many classes, you lose your scholarship, things like that. I moved out very young.
Mm.
I moved out of my house when I was 15, and I moved, when I was graduated high school, I moved a little bit closer, more into the city, closer to school and stuff. And then my house burned down. I moved back home for like 5 minutes and my house burned down. So then I moved in with a friend, and she lived right across the street from UNO, University of New Orleans. And so I just went, and then I'm like, okay, I have to get my life together. But this nursing is actually a second career for me. I was in real estate and
Oh.
did really well the first couple of years. It was real estate, like you talk about people flipping houses, like did that before it was cool.
Mhm,
But I
mhm,
flipped
mhm.
these contracts. I didn't actually buy the houses. I would put them under contract. I would find these really funky looking properties, locate the owners, and my partner at the time had a lot of experience in construction, so he would estimate repair costs. And I had put this little team together of appraisers and real estate agents and banker people, and it was just almost a turnkey thing. And then we had this big market crash around 2000. Well, I think for the rest of the world it was like 06, 07, but for us we had a really big demand for housing in New Orleans because of Hurricane Katrina, so we didn't feel it quite as hard until probably about 2008. And I was just working and working and working, and I wasn't getting paid. And so
Mm.
yeah, there was a lot of stuff going on like personally at the time. I ended up getting married, getting divorced, getting pregnant, and I'm like, I have to figure something out because
Mhm.
this isn't working right now. Like I'm
Mhm.
working and I'm not getting paid. We couldn't like in 2006, my dog could have gotten a loan on a signature
Yeah.
for 160 grand. And then on 2007, somebody with an 800 credit score and 75 grand to put down on a 150K house couldn't get a loan closed. So it was very challenging. And I'm like, what can I do, that I can just really do it? I always wanted to be a veterinarian, but I'm like,
Mhm.
that's going to be too much expense, too much school. Who knows when I'll be working? Like I need
Mhm.
to work, and so actually, the state of Louisiana were doing a lot of grants for
Mhm.
healthcare workers
Mm.
because there was just a huge need.
Mhm.
There I feel like there's always a need more or less for nursing, and so I was like, I had never thought about nursing. You absolutely never thought in my life that that's what I would be doing, but I was like, I think I can do that. And I was pregnant, so I was very, very interested in the body and the pregnancy. What happens, like I was a well-read, regular person when it came to my own body and pregnancy, and I was just really fascinated with it. So I was like,
Mhm.
I'm gonna work in that field. Like I didn't care about anything else, any
Mhm.
other, field, adult care, pediatrics. I mean, I didn't want to have anything to do with that, but I just wanted to go and learn, labor, delivery, and that sort of thing. And that's what I did. It took me a few years to get into that particular specialty, which was interesting, but
Yeah.
that's what it is. So
I
I mean,
love that.
it was
You're not the only one that I've talked to that nursing is their second career. And I
mhm,
remember going to nursing school. It was not actually technically not my first career
mhm,
either. I was still in healthcare, but um I remember probably half of those in my class, it was their second career, and I thought that that was so fascinating that and I had always remembered telling people that, it's like, you can go into nursing as your second career. It's never too late to do that. So I love to meet people that have done other things. And I definitely remember that market when it was the way it was. My ex-husband is a realtor, so we lived
Oh,
that as well.
wow.
So all of those things that you said, I mean, I live in California, but all of those things you said, I was like, oh yeah, I remember all of that time. So it just, and the fact that you were doing all this work and not getting paid. Um, and you definitely went in a completely different direction, but,
I sure
obviously
did.
it's it's been good for you. Okay, so you decide then to go to nursing school because you have this connection with, your pregnancy, and
Mhm.
you have to take some prereqs to get started, and then so where did you end up going to nursing school?
So I went to a school called Our Lady of the Lake. It's actually I want to say like their what do you call it? Their main flagship, I guess, is in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. But they, at the time, I don't think this program still exists, but they were doing an accelerated nursing program, and they had a couple of little satellite locations, and one of them was at this hospital that wasn't very far from where I lived. And I don't think I had ever. Maybe I'd been to the hospital like once or twice in my life, so I kind of knew where it was. And they had class Monday through Friday. I want to say Monday through Friday. We had clinicals on the weekends. It was very intense. It was very, very
Mhm.
intense. But I'm telling you, like I made friends that I'm still friends with
Wow.
today because I felt, like when in nursing, you can probably appreciate this. Maybe when you're under duress with people,
Yeah.
you tend to form bonds with those people. So we were very much under duress. It was a
Yeah.
very intense program. I don't think the program is still around. I would be very surprised. I
Oh.
didn't when I got out of there, I was like, okay, phew, moving on.
Right,
I
right,
didn't stick
right.
around in academia.
Do you regret going through such an accelerated program, or would you, if you were to do it over again, you would have spent more time on it, or what would you say?
I don't regret it. I really don't because that was my goal was like I got to get in and out and I've got to be working. Like I
Right,
don't have 4 years to mess around.
right.
I have and here's the thing, like I was in school for both of my children. And I was a nurse. I was in, I think in prerequisites when I had my son. He was born in 2008. And I mean, I'm in the hospital with my flashcards. Like I wasn't playing around.
Yep.
I missed maybe a couple of weeks of class and I had to do all
Mhm.
these sciences. So no, I don't think that I regret it. I think at the time it was exactly what I needed to
Yeah,
do. And
yeah.
I'm a very like I had been self-employed, so just going from that level of autonomy and now I've got
Mm.
feel owned. I called it like my
Mhm.
first big girl job because
Yeah,
I didn't
right.
know anything about retirement. I was like 20 years old doing real estate and
Yeah,
making decent money, but I didn't really understand things like health insurance and
right.
retirement plans
Right.
and
Adulting.
PTO and all that kind of stuff. I was like, what is going on? I'm such an adult right now.
Yeah.
I appreciated how diverse the field of nursing was because I'm a person who gets bored very easily.
Mhm.
Um, Later on diagnosed with ADHD as an adult. That's a whole other story. But
Mm,
I realized pretty much early on, like I've got to have the type of career that I can feel autonomous to a degree. Like if I get bored, I can still be a nurse and do something else within the field of nursing. I like to teach, there's so many things you can do as a
yeah,
nurse, and
yeah.
I really don't come from a family of healthcare workers who are like, really? You're going to do what?
Yeah.
I didn't
So
know
you were
anything
kind of the
about it.
first
I really
first
didn't.
and
So
the
it was kind of
pioneer.
fun. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
no, I don't regret it.
Okay, all right. So then you finished nursing school and you said you already knew that you wanted to go into the OBGYN area, but you didn't
Mhm.
at first. Did you start working in some other specialty?
What had happened was I from the jump, and my clinical instructors knew like the end of the 10 months, you have a preceptorship. It was like once like 140 hours you had to spend it. And they try to put you where you wanted to go. I mean, and I
Mm,
had good grades. I requested this very early, and right at the end or the beginning of the preceptorship, the girl that I was supposed to be with, I never even met her. I never talked to her. She was an OB nurse. She dropped out of the preceptorship program. She had a death in the family, and she. I never talked to her myself, but my instructor said she's not going to be able to take you.
mm,
And I'm like, oh my God, what am I going to do? And so they were scrambling to find somebody for me. So I ended up getting stuck in a night shift ED, in the middle of the city, like the last place in the world I wanted to be. And
yeah,
so I'm like, well, that was my shoe into OB. I have nobody now. Like I didn't know anybody in the field. And
right.
so a couple that I actually sold a house to, I think I was their realtor for, I want to say it was a house that they bought. The wife was she was a director of a med surge ortho unit
Mm,
at the hospital where I had went to the school where the campus was. And,
mm,
I had asked her, and I guess it was a little humbling, like, oh, hey, remember when sold my
right.
house? I was like, would you do me a favor? Because I wasn't super close with her. I was actually friends with her husband and went to high school with her husband, but like, would you mind just looking at my resume and helping me, like, just proofread it, see
Right.
whatever. And she was like, well, if you want to work on, because she was director of a ortho med surge and then a
Mhm,
GIGU
mhm,
floor. And
mhm.
she's like, well, would you be interested in working on our floor? And I was like, yeah, I would
Like, I
be
need a
interested in
job.
working. Like I had no, like we had another hospital that had a really busy OB unit. And I mean, the funny thing is like I applied there probably twice a year for about like for years. I just kept
Mm,
because I went right into ortho med surge. I didn't want GIGU, but I went right into ortho med surge night shift. And again, not an experience that I would trade, but I really felt like I paid my dues hardcore right there in
mhm,
floor.
mhm.
And I learned so much. So again, like I wouldn't really trade that part of it.
Right.
It was very hard. But I had an amazing
Yeah,
charge nurse. I had an amazing
yeah,
team, and
yeah,
a lot of us were new grads. So we learned together. We had fun. We did hurricanes together, things like that.
yeah,
But
yeah.
yeah, that was rough. And then probably like 4 or 5 years after I started that job, I went back and did the bachelor and I got my BSN,
Mm, mhm.
like an online program because I was like, I can't just get a BSN. I don't know anything about nursing. Like, let me get some experience first. And now I know this is not really how it works so much, but to
Right.
me, it felt like I want to be on the floor and I want to put this into practice before I go back and pursue. And once I had my bachelor's, then I think other hospitals started paying a little bit more attention
Mm,
for some reason, to my resume. It wasn't like I was any smarter.
right.
Bachelor's,
No, no, I
but it
get you.
didn't make me
Yeah,
a better nurse. It just made me a
yeah,
little educated. So,
yeah.
um, yeah, and it's just funny how it all works out because at that time I was going through a horrible breakup, terrible, terrible. Like just the worst thing ever. And I got a call in the middle of the day. And again, I was night shift, so I'm not usually being awake in the middle of the day. Never
Mm,
answer my
mhm.
phone. Those days were gone from real estate. And I just happened to answer the phone. And it was a recruiter from an L&D floor at the hospital that I still work for today. And he's like, I know it's a little bit further than what you when where you work, but would you be interested in interviewing with labor and delivery? And I said, I'd be interested. Where did you get me from the other hospital's reject pile? Like, how did you even find me? And
Right,
so and
right.
I went, and it was so funny because I went to that interview and I just nailed it. I was like, I am not going to mess this up.
Mm,
I nailed it. And then I didn't hear a word for like
yeah.
days. And my hospital that I was currently working at offered me, because I was applying to their L&D, but they're like, no, we have to put you on postpartum first. I didn't know anything. I was like, I don't want to do that. I want to do labor and delivery.
Right.
Now, going back, I would say I would should have done that because it would have helped me in some fill some holes that I didn't
Mm,
realize I was going to have just going straight into
mhm,
L&D. But
mhm.
it turned out that the people that interviewed me, like the director, she immediately went on vacation as soon as she left. So she was on vacation, not even thinking about
Right,
me. She was in Disney World,
right,
like riding a roller coaster.
right.
I was probably the furthest thing from her mind. And so it just so happened that I knew somebody that worked at her hospital, and I'm like, hey, do you know this person? Can you just feel
Mhm.
it out? Because I'm getting an offer to do postpartum. It's not really what I want, but I have to make a decision. And so she was very helpful. She got right in touch with her, and she's like, oh, she's totally going to offer you a job. She's just on vacation. So I was like,
Oh.
and then
Too
that's where I've been
sweet.
ever since. And I mean, when I walked in that door and I started, like, one of the first days,
Uh-huh.
I just felt like I was home,
You knew from the beginning that that's where you wanted to be and
Yeah.
that's amazing. So how long ago was that when
That was
you
at the end of 2015.
okay.
In December of 2015 is when I
Mhm.
started over there. And yeah, it's what, 8 years now, something
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah. So that was definitely your calling. That's what and to this day you are kind of the go-to person. I know that I've witnessed that. You're the go-to person for these OB, cases that
I'm such a nerd. Like, I can't get enough of it.
yeah.
I'm always like, I want to go to the convention. I want to do this. I
Yeah.
want to make the
Yeah.
PowerPoints. And my
Ah.
preceptors, I had
uh,
two, but one of them really, she was an educator. She retired in 2021, I believe. I still talk to her probably once a week though. She's my work
mhm.
mama. I mean, she instantly adopted me. It
Yeah.
was just chemistry from the wazoo, and she was such a nerd. So she really took a lot of time, appreciated my thirst for the knowledge, and she
Mm.
took a lot of time,
Yeah.
explaining things to me. Whereas I think, like, for her, and being an L&D, since I want to say, like, since the 60s or the 70s, she had
Yeah.
really been around for a long time. And all she ever got was an associate. That was the joke. She's like, I'm just a diploma nurse.
Right.
I don't know anything. But she really recognized that in me, and really fed it and really fueled that flame and the desire for me to want to grow and learn, and to also want
Mhm.
to teach, because
Mhm.
there's just people just get stuck, stuck in
Yeah.
things.
Yeah.
It's very uncommon. The longer that I've been in it, it's very uncommon to see people really go after pursuing the continued education. Like, I know now, being in the legal nursing field, I definitely see more of it because there's a lot of content creation, education, things like that. But
Mhm.
in my little world of this little, it was a community hospital. We're part of a big system, but it was a community hospital. And it's still not a huge, like, maybe we do 1,000 deliveries a year. So
Mhm.
for us in that role of wanting to educate and be educated, and that was not a real common thing
Mhm.
when I was just starting
Right.
out. So I just ate
Right.
it up. I ate it up.
Did you take on once she left, did you take on like an education role? Are you the educator for your department or a leadership
No,
role?
no. She was never officially the educator.
Mm.
Um, the director at the time was very much carte blanche. Like, she let us do things. She valued education. She supported us going to conferences and teaching little PowerPoints and things like that. So I sort of followed in my mentor's footsteps, and I would do meetings and, PowerPoints. And I
Mhm.
started teaching the childbirth classes. I really enjoyed teaching, the
Mhm.
mamas and daddies to be. And but then there was some, you know, series of events where we went through a couple of directors. Like, she ended up leaving, and then the next one we got loved me. We got along beautifully. She was also very supportive, but we were right in the midst of COVID.
Mhm.
And she actually put me in a little bit more of a leadership duty position. So I had a lot, and I started teaching fetal monitoring, which I never 100% felt great about that. I was like, what do you mean? I can't teach this. I just learned it. And they're like, no, 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 you
Yeah.
trust me. You're good.
Yeah.
And so I just felt like what 2020 to me wasn't bad. I know that sounds crazy to say that, but that was a good year for me as a
Right.
nurse in my department. There was a
Right.
lot going on that was working well for me. 2021, however, was not good. And by the end of the 2021, I was like fried to a crisp. I just did not want, I just felt like I couldn't do one more thing. I have to teach the
Mm.
childbirth class, I have to teach the fetal monitoring class, I have
Hmm.
to do, just quality improvement projects. And they were
Hmm.
all things that I was very interested in, but just seeing so many different changes in COVID and in my workforce and in my environment and with my coworkers, I was like, I am going to lose my mind. I can't, I'm
Yeah.
just, it's too much.
Yeah. So you needed a bit of a change, and that is that what led you into legal nursing?
Yes, I had heard
Okay.
about legal nursing a
Hmm.
couple here and there, those Vicky Malazzo postcards, and
Yep.
we had some speakers at one of our conferences that talked about it because I was still doing the Zoom,
Hmm.
conventions and things, and these girls were talking about it, and I'm like, that sounds kind of interesting, and I loved it. Like I'm a chart junkie. Like I love,
Right.
going through the chart. And that's the
Yep.
thing, like my patients, I want the whole story. Like I really want to get to know them. I want to, and in being in quality improvement, like you realize how differently different things in your patient's life affect their care and what they have access to. Are they, I learned a lot as far as in quality improvement, like just to withhold judgment on
Hmm.
patients. We all have our biases. I was real big in diversity, inclusion, and things like that. And I learned,
Hmm.
what, here are my biases, identify them and see, like, and it really makes you aware of how other people's, there
Right.
were things that they say and what drives them to think and do the things that they do. So I was, I was just very much interested in that. And so I thought that's kind of cool. But then I was
Yeah.
just again in a state of desperation and burned outedness, and I
Yeah.
was probably scrolling through Instagram and I saw this ad for this program, and I was like,
Hmm.
oh, okay, why not, and I started just chatting with the girl, and I'm like, oh, I like her, I feel like I'm talking to
Hmm.
a friend, or talking to
Hmm.
somebody. And
Hmm.
I wasn't really in a position in my life where I could take on that, like a whole new thing right now, because again I was
Hmm.
still very, very pulled in many directions. I ended up
Right.
getting COVID at the end of the year, and I mean I worked from home on quality stuff, and long story short, just, but I ended up investing in that program at the end of that year, and not really because I knew it was going to go up in price the next year. So I was like, let me just get it. But
Mm-hmm.
I don't know when I'm going to get to it. But
Right.
it's here now. It's not quite on the front burner, but it's not quite on the back burner. And
Yeah.
I want to do this, but I also have all this like massive sense of responsibility to my
Right.
unit, my patients. We had
Right.
hurricanes going on. I mean,
Right.
it was wild.
Right.
2021 was just a wild time. So
Yeah.
I bought it, and I would get on these little calls. They had like these weekly Zooms, and
Mm-hmm.
but it was a very long time, probably like another 8 months or so before I've really even
Dug
started,
into it. Yeah.
really even dug
Yeah.
into it.
Yeah. What got you to dig into it? Were you just like, okay, I'm ready. I'm ready to do this. Did you finish your obligations, or were you just ready to do it?
Yeah, I mean, we went through some leadership changes, and then there was a new director, and she didn't know. She was from a completely different hospital. She was in the same system, but she was from a different hospital. Says, I mean, a different hospital, and so she didn't know any of us. And I felt that there was, like there was really good chemistry with my previous directors. And I'm not saying like I don't want her, if God
Yeah,
she
yeah,
ever sees
yeah.
this,
Yeah.
I don't want her to think like, oh, we didn't like each other. There was just a different energy in the room with
Mhm.
her, and it I felt like I had a lot of knowledge about my unit. I had a key to every office, but my title was not one that was like, oh, this is a leader of this unit, kind of thing. It was just, I was very unofficially in my role. I mean, and so when she came, she didn't even know like the quality things we were doing. We were trying to get these designations in our hospital. So I was like, so burned out, and I'm like, this is my
Mhm.
chance to turn some of this over. And so that's what I did. I basically, since she couldn't really like, the other ones were good at, I guess, rallying me into it
Including
because I
you.
didn't want to
Yeah.
let them down
Yeah.
personally, you know,
Yeah.
didn't want to let my
Yeah.
youth down. But this girl, I'm like,
Yep.
it's not personal. I can't let her down. She doesn't know me. She doesn't even know
Right.
what I do, basically. And
Right.
so, um, I'm just gonna get it to where I can get to a stopping point really and try to just
Mm.
offload some of this because
Mhm.
at that time I hadn't really been able to do an a fetal monitoring class because every time I would try, we would have to stop and go because we had patients coming in. We had so many
Oh,
shortages, staffing
yeah.
shortages. So anyway, she hired and brought some people from her hospital to take over leadership roles. And then the other two girls, so it was like me, the director, and these other two leadership, we were the four salaried people on the unit. And the director left. The other two girls that were salary managers, they each left to go on maternity leave at the same time in October. So it's just me and the new director. And then she was bringing people in. And so I basically just spent some time getting them acquainted with our quality improvement projects and handed it off.
Yeah. Handing things off.
I handed it off. And then
Yeah.
at the time, there were a lot of contracts in the area. People were leaving to go do, I mean, it made no sense
Yeah.
because people were leaving to
Yeah.
go do contract nursing at other hospitals. And then other hospitals were leaving to come do contract nursing at our hospital. And you have all these local nurses just hospital hopping. Like, this makes
Yeah.
no sense.
Yeah.
Why don't you just pay us?
Yeah.
you know,
Yep. Yep.
no, you know,
Yep.
and so at that point in time, I decided I was like, I'm gonna go do some contract nursing too. I want a piece of this.
Mhm.
And I did, and I was like, I have to kind of put some distance between myself and this role. I
Yep.
was just really burned out.
Yep.
So I
Yep.
sort of made a plan to get cracking, and there was a lot going on, but I just made a plan to get cracking with it and to try to put it into practice as soon
Yeah.
as humanly possible.
Yeah. So you jumped in now that you made some separation and you I know we are like people pleasing people too. We don't want to disappoint. We don't want to. But then when you have to, when you want to look out for yourself, it's like, all right, when am I going to look out for myself? So, all right. So you started to dig into the program and understand the skill, right? And then did you totally fall in love with being an LNC?
You want the real answer? Well,
Yeah,
it
I
was
want to know. I mean, if
it was interesting.
difficult,
Well, okay.
yeah,
So there was a lot of things going on within the program, and so the facilitator, basically the owner director of the program, she was like, you need to come work with us. You need to come. I want to bring you on our team. So I was like, oh boy,
yeah,
we're gonna do this thing. And so she's like, you need to finish this, finish the first part. We
yeah,
had these practice cases. And so that really lit a fire under me. And then she would bring me to her house. She would bring me, and I mean, across the country. Like, she's in California, I'm in Louisiana,
hmm
and
hmm
I went to California like 3 or 4 times in a three or
hmm
4 month period,
hmm
and I was still doing my contract work. So I was making bank.
hmm
And she's like, come on, this is how much I'm going to be able to pay you, and
hmm
resign from your jobs, basically. And my other job was waiting for me because I was on a contract. So it was just like, I'm
right,
going to come back in 12 weeks or whatever. And I extended, and that was fine. And so I was like, oh my gosh, okay. And I mean, I'm a single, divorced,
hmm hmm
primary
mom,
breadwinner, only
yeah,
breadwinner in my home. I have
yeah,
2 kids,
yeah, yeah,
some poodle children, and
right,
I've taught college, like everything's
right,
on me. So
right,
for me to just leave my secure jobs, even
right,
if I was burned out, was a big ask, a huge
hmm
ask. And I
hmm
had a lot of faith in the situation. And so I was like,
hmm
okay, here we go, next chapter.
right,
I mean, to me, it was happening, right? And
right,
and I did that. And when I did that, um, whatever was going on in her life and the program at the
yeah,
time
yeah,
sort of jumped full steam ahead of any plans we made. And she was not able to fulfill those promises to me. And so then
yeah,
I was sitting there like, holy crap, I don't have a job. And I had left my contract. So it wasn't like I could go crawling back to them either. Because
yeah,
I renewed it. And then like a few weeks into it, I was like, okay, I got this other job offer. I'm excited about it. It's a lot of, it's what I want to do, blah, blah. And
right,
so then I'm sitting there, and it was like the beginning of the summer, and I had nothing. I mean, I
yeah,
had my savings because I was putting money on the side for my future taxes because this was all
right,
tax free, all of my stuff that
Right,
was
right.
tax free. So I was sitting there, I was like, I am really gonna have to just go
Mhm.
all in on this and start, getting some work
Yeah,
because this
yeah,
ain't gonna,
yeah,
this isn't
yeah.
gonna
You
cut
gotta
it.
keep yourself
So
afloat. Mhm.
yeah, and at this time, like I was still thinking, like, okay, this is just a temporary setback. It's gonna happen. It's still like I was in a little bit of denial about the
Sure, sure,
situation.
sure.
Like,
Yeah,
okay,
yeah, yeah. Of course.
and I started doing some subcontracting work for another LNC, and it was like billing and
Yeah.
and like personal injury type stuff. And I
Yeah.
remember sitting in front of my computer, literally in tears, like this is miserable. Like I cannot sit here. My
Not
eyes are
what
going
you
cross-eyed.
plan. Yeah.
I'm looking at the graphs and all this, and I wasn't getting work. I had a good amount of sub work, but
Right.
I was miserable. And so
Yeah.
then I got my first OB case. It was
Mhm.
a subcontract for
Mhm.
another
Mhm.
legal
Mhm.
nurse, and I was like, "Oh, this is fun. Okay, this is fun. Okay,
Yeah,
all right. Now
yeah,
we're speaking a language that I can get
yeah,
on board
yeah.
with, and
So you
and
got
it
a
was a long,
new
it was a while before there was another OB case, but doing that one, and I'm like, it's going to take me so much longer than it's supposed to. I know, but I was having a
Mhm.
blast. I was just
Mhm.
researching, feeding that knowledge. Like, okay, yeah, that's right. I do love this. It's right. I
Right.
do love it. I was just burned out, and
Right.
so I started. The word got out basically
Yeah.
that it was that I did a good job, and getting that feedback was really encouraging to me
Mhm.
because I don't know anything about the
Oh,
legal
yeah.
world or
Yeah.
any of that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it just, I
Feedback
still
is a
didn't.
big deal. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So that was fun, and I'm happy to say uh, there's no more billing summaries in my life. I will
Right.
maybe one day, another day, I will reapproach that, but I don't see it happen, and it's
Yeah.
sad because I really do love math. Like
Yeah.
this is
Yeah,
very much
yeah,
a
yeah.
subject that I enjoy. But I'm like, no, we're not talking
Right.
about math. I've moved on.
Yeah. So you had a moment, a long enough moment where you were like, "Wait a minute, I was excited about this, and now I'm questioning it." Right? Obviously, you're
Mhm,
questioning it because it wasn't what you planned. You dropped everything to do, this,
mhm.
and it wasn't what you planned. So you had to figure out whether it would be worth it or not to continue. But the good thing is that you got this case that made you realize that you were still on the right track,
Mhm,
and that's what you wanted to do. So now, with you working as an LNC, I know I've seen you be the go-to person for L&D stuff, which is amazing.
mhm.
And to be that go-to person, obviously, you know your stuff. Um, what is life look like for you now? Are you doing a lot of subcontracting? Are you doing your own, you have your own attorneys? What does that look like for you now? And are you still practicing in LD?
Yes. So again, that first case was good. It wasn't a big, it was maybe a 5-hour case.
Mhm.
Um, and I wasn't doing a great job of marketing. I was like,
Mm.
I had my little emails and I was trying to hit the local market, but I was getting referrals as a
Mm.
subcontractor.
Mhm.
And then people were like, oh my God, I have this OB case, I have this OB case. So I
Right.
had a steady stream of subcontract work. And I mean, at this point now, I think I'm up to like 6 or 7 LNCs that I sub for. And I know this is
Mm.
going to sound
Mhm.
like silly, I guess, but I enjoy the subcontractor role.
Okay.
Um, one of these days I will get my own attorneys. It's coming, I know it is, but again, just like when I became a nurse, I'm like, I want to be on the floor for a few years before I go
Yeah,
and
yeah, yeah,
get a higher,
absolutely.
degree. It's like I
Yeah.
really want to get my feet wet in this because I enjoy subcontracting because there are so just like I work with, 8 or 9 different doctors, attorneys are very similar in the sense of like they all want it a little bit different.
Yeah.
They all have their different things that are important to them,
Yeah.
the styles that they like. And so it's
Yeah.
very interesting to me to see all of that and just to work with other successful LNCs that do appreciate what I can bring to the table
Right.
without me being on my own, like going,
Yeah.
oh gosh, Like, I
Yeah.
don't know the
Yeah,
legal.
there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, you building a business around subcontracting and being the go-to person for that, that's, commendable because it's, you are making a name for yourself in your own right, whether or not they're your own attorneys, you're still making a name for yourself. So that's amazing. I
Right.
think
Building my
it's awesome.
product, as they say.
Yeah.
Building my
Yeah.
product, I guess. And
Right.
I've definitely found some consistency with my own product as to what I like to include no matter what. And I think that that thing has been the research piece. Like, really, if I'm gonna say, because
Yeah.
I'm a little paranoid, like, again,
Yeah.
not knowing how these trials work or the legal
Right.
world. It's like, I
Mhm.
want to make sure that if I'm putting something out there, I have
Mhm.
researched it up, down,
Mhm.
left, right, and I can
Mhm.
back it up. This
Right.
is the standard of according to this and that, and this, the doctor standard is this, and the nursing standard is this. And so just to be able to point out all of those different little red
Right.
flags in the records and stuff, it's very, it's very beneficial
Yeah,
when you're
that
making a
actually led that you actually asked answered my question. It was going to be, where do you shine the most? So
uh-huh.
you being that's kind of your signature move on your reports is is you shine, with all of your research and being able to back it up. Would you say that that's the case?
For
Or would
sure,
you say
yeah.
yeah.
No, that seems to be what people appreciate the most, like,
Mhm.
it's just and because I have a little bit of an educational, like, background, and I've
Mhm.
taught patients as well as,
Mhm.
nurses and stuff, it's like I
Mhm.
can break things down into digestible little amounts of
Right.
information where like, if you give me a chronology, and it's the thing about the labor and delivery, the OB chronologies, is like a lot of times you're doing like a minute by minute, it's not like a day or an encounter. You're just like, okay, what happened here in this 10 minutes of strip, and what happened here in this 10 minutes, and what
Right.
these interventions, were they appropriate? And so it's uh very complicated sometimes, and very there's lots of different things to
Yeah.
consider. And so that makes them a little bit more time consuming to do as cases, which I think
Mm.
is
Mhm.
not common knowledge in the
Mhm.
LNC field. But I was actually I found another um, legal nurse who only does birth injury cases, and she's actually very busy, and gave me. She wasn't one that did our program or anything, but
Mhm.
she kind of went rogue, early on, and
Yeah.
she really helps me a lot. Um, just to look at the medical records in the ways like makes me think about things like, okay, prenatally, things that I didn't really know, because she's like, hi, like you say, I'm the
Yeah.
go-to. It still sounds
Yeah.
funny because I feel like I do know a lot, but
Yeah.
my experience, my background is not in super high risk OB. I'm
Right.
always like theoretically I know it,
Right.
but in practice,
Right.
I haven't, my hospital is not, we have sick patients, but not like, we're not doing like
Yeah.
in utero surgeries and things like
Right.
that
Right.
on
Right.
my
Right.
unit.
Right.
So she has
Right.
become a very, very excellent resource to me for things where I'm like, I don't 100% understand, am I
Mm.
like, if I'm
Mhm.
just like, can you look at this? Can
Mhm.
I get another set of eyes? I try not to abuse that because I know she's busy,
Yeah.
but it
No,
has
but
been
I
just
think that
really
that's
nice
really great
resource.
that you share that because I think that that seems to be a running theme in all of these interviews I've done is that um there's a great set of resources in this community that are
Mhm.
willing to help with no strings attached, right?
Yes,
I mean, in that case, that for what you're
100%.
describing to me is
Oh,
exactly
yes,
that. I mean, one could
exactly.
look at that as being competition, or the other can look at that as being, collaborating so that, everybody wins, right?
Right. And it's a fine line because, especially as a subcontractor, knowing that eventually I'll probably be on my own, and may be in direct competition. People don't usually stay subs forever. So she's like, oh gosh, I'm training my competition, you know. But at the same
Yeah,
time,
but
she's like, and we're friends. So it's not like
yeah,
we weren't really friends before. We made friends in the process.
yeah,
So we could
yeah,
very
yeah.
frankly, talk to
Mhm.
each other. It's just I feel like there is enough, to go
Yeah.
around,
To go
and
around. Absolutely.
everybody's been like the ones that are really working hard are very, very busy and things like that.
Mhm.
And so
Mhm.
she will come to me sometimes and say, can
Mhm.
you look at this? What would
Run
you
things
call
by you.
this? And we just collaborate with each other. It's
Yeah.
a very beautiful relationship. And she's the first OB nurse that I had to do subcontracting for. So It was the first time that I had somebody like, I didn't know like, I wasn't the most
Right.
knowledgeable person in
Right,
the room,
right, right,
so
right,
it was really awesome.
right.
And that I think is a very, very cool thing. And I feel
Yeah.
like I am extremely open
Mhm.
to feedback, constructive criticism. Please don't insult me. It
Mhm.
takes a lot to offend
Mhm.
me, but
Mhm.
I want people like the people
You're
pleasing, like
coachable
I
though.
want people to be happy with
Yeah,
with my
exactly.
work, and I'll do whatever I need to do,
Right.
to get there
Right.
in the process. So
Right.
kind of just works.
Right. No, I totally get that. And the feedback is a big deal. And that keeps
Mhm.
things to keeps being a running theme through these conversations as well
Really.
is getting feedback is really important to all of us. We may or may not get that, but it is very important to us for the exact same reason that you just stated is because we want to put out the best product possible. So if we
Right.
are, getting feedback, that means we're coachable. All of us seem to be coachable. Maybe that's
Yes.
why I've chosen the most coachable group of LNCs to have conversations with.
I like to think so,
Um, but it's great because we are coachable and we all want to put together the best product possible. So
Mhm.
it's great when you can get it. All right. So what would you say is one thing that you wish you would have known before you got into LNC work?
Girl. Adobe.
Oh, okay. All right.
Adobe, the big fancy one. Somebody's like, you need to buy this. Like, there,
Yeah.
I know I'm not utilizing it. That, and then,
Yeah.
you know, I am not the youngest, springest of the chickens. And social media's been around probably since I started nursing school. I think everybody had a Facebook, but like
Yeah.
LinkedIn, I don't.
Yeah.
I just saw a message from like 3 months ago. They were like, "Oh, can I send you some? Can I get your
Yeah. Yeah.
CV?" And blah, blah, I was like, "Oh my god."
Yeah.
I wish I knew more about putting that.
Okay.
I'm sure there's people I can hire to do this when
Yeah.
at some point in time, but like just to put out content on the different
Yeah.
social media
Yeah.
platforms. I wish that I could figure that out. Like that I had known how to do that already,
Yeah.
to some
Yeah.
degree. And then Adobe
Yeah.
would have been super helpful going
Yeah.
in. That would have been a real
Yeah.
edge to
That's really
have.
helpful. That's really helpful. And I say
Game
that
changer.
the reason why I say that also is that I've been getting a lot of messages from people on LinkedIn who are listening to the podcast who haven't quite made the leap to do LNC work, who
Uh-huh.
are just soaking up all of these great little hints and tips. And so you just shared two really great things for people that
Yes.
are, just looking at, maybe taking that leap and
Mm-hmm.
learning. And
Hmm.
so I'm glad you shared that. Yeah, the Adobe thing is
Oh, it's a
incredibly
game
useful.
changer.
And I think
And
that
then
yeah, go ahead.
I was gonna say one of the coolest features I found, not really with putting
Mm,
out my work, but it's like you can go and redact, redact every time I do a product, like each of my cases has been different. And
right.
so if I have somebody wanting some sample work product, I'm like, well, you want a merit review? Do you want a chronology? I'll send you two
Yeah.
different merit reviews I did, and I can redact those
Yeah.
completely, professionally with Adobe
Right.
and send them, and they're like, oh, looking all
Right.
professional.
Yeah, there are so many bells and whistles with it. Like you said, I don't think I utilize it to its maximum. Every time I do a case,
Hmm.
I like, oh, I try to mess around a little bit more and
Yeah.
make things a little bit
Yeah.
better. And you just look at there are so many features to it. So
Yeah, I like the bookmarking
maybe
feature a lot too. That's
the
helpful.
bookmarking, and I don't think that I use the bookmarking feature as much as I should or as well as I should. So that is
Yeah.
actually one thing that I try and dig into a little bit, just to make things a
Some
little bit
attorneys want
better.
you to send them their bookmarked PDF. Some attorneys want you to put a Bates
Yeah,
numbering, and I'm like, I have to learn how to do
right.
all this. It'll just
Right.
more. You just want to keep adding skills to
Yeah.
your skill base, and
Yeah.
that makes you just
Yeah.
more marketable. I think. Like, oh, I
Right,
can.
absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think also what you said about LinkedIn and understanding that and content creation and all those things. I think that those just come with time too, because
Hmm.
I think in the beginning, you really don't know number one, who you're marketing to, because for you, really right now you're kind of marketing to LNCs
Hmm.
versus attorneys, and that's like different content. So I think over
Right.
time, the more that you get to know your own skill, right? Because of the cases that you've done, you've gotten to know your own skill in the LNC world. Then you kind of know who your audience is. as you move forward. So I don't necessarily think that, and that's my own opinion, is that you would know that ahead of time, you know?
Right. And and
So,
as an L&D nurse, and I still do practice clinically. That was funny. I went back to work. I was like, I hate it here. Working from home was just not, surprisingly not for me. I mean, I do
ah,
work from home. I do,
yeah,
but full
you
time work from
liked being,
home, I was
yeah,
like, I've lost my purpose in life. Like I like
yeah,
taking care of patients.
ah,
I love my coworkers. I'm a very
yeah,
social, it wouldn't always seem like it, but I'm a very social
mm,
person, and I
mhm,
value relationships
mhm,
and work and relationships with my
mhm,
patients. And so,
mhm,
one thing as a fetal monitoring instructor and as a, a nurse educator unofficially was I like to share things that I've picked up from doing cases with other OB nurses,
yeah,
because a lot of them do not get. I was very, 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 very blessed to have the preceptor and the orientation that I had in L&D, but a lot of people do not get that. They'll get a 6-week new
yeah,
grad orientation.
mhm,
They don't even know, like, we don't have residents in my hospital. So it's like, I'm the good, it's me and the doctor,
yeah,
and
yeah,
they have to have a lot of faith in us. We don't even have a
right,
doctor in house, so for
mhm,
me to call and say you need to come now, they have to trust
right,
that I mean it,
right,
and so I've
right,
learned a lot about how to protect myself, how to keep my
yeah,
patients safe, what things happen, mistakes that have been made in the field,
right,
in the cases that I've done. And I mean, some of them are just terrible slam dunk
right,
cases, like, I can't believe people are out there doing this. So I
yeah,
do
yeah,
find there's a big audience of other OB nurses that can benefit from the things that I'm
mhm,
learning too, that
mhm,
I want to
mhm.
share that with too.
Yeah, makes you a natural educator. I mean, more of an educator than you thought you would be when it comes to this. I know exactly what you're saying, is that the things that you see in this world are very eye-opening, and I can also relate to that because I've been able to share those things. Same kind of situation in the OR where you have new nurses that maybe didn't get the training or don't understand things or just don't know what they don't know, and a lot of these cases are eye-opening and
Hmm.
educational in the fact that, it allows you to share that information with others. So the fact
Yes.
that I do find it interesting though that you were like, I got to get back to people. I got to get
For
back to
somebody who
people.
couldn't wait to get away, I was
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
oh,
yeah.
I was
Yeah. That's
absolutely
good.
miserable,
Yeah. You're not the only one. There are, I know that I spoke to Erin LaFerriere.
Uh-huh.
She's the same way. She was like, I will never be full time in this. I will always have my hand clinically in there. So you're
Oh
definitely
no,
not
it
the
just, it
only
wasn't
one.
time. It wasn't time for me to leave
Yeah.
bedside
Yeah.
yet.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
That was probably just something that surprised me. One of
Yeah.
the biggest surprises that I had. It was just like, I'm gonna love working from home. And it's like,
Right.
I'm so
That's so good to, and that's so good
glad.
that you shared that because again, like I think people need to hear that too. It's like it may not be number one. There are a lot of things that you shared that are really helpful, I think, to others. Is that you know being a subcontractor is a good thing, right? And being, not walking away from bedside is a good thing. It's not a bad thing. So
Hmm.
sometimes I think that maybe there's a misconception as well of if you do go down this road that you're going to have to market yourself to attorneys and you're going to have to leave your job,
Hmm.
and that's really, you just proved that that's not necessarily the reality of it for
Right.
it's just like nursing in general. There's so many different things that you can do with this LNC world. There's so many different ways that you can do this, and you just shared all of
Yeah,
that.
no,
So I
I'm
think it's
definitely trying to build a
valuable.
strong foundation for the long haul.
Yeah,
I really, it is absolutely no disrespect to anybody that goes all in for the jump, because let's be honest, I could probably be making double of the money that I
yeah,
make as an
sure,
LNC, not subbing,
sure,
but although now I get good sub rates,
sure,
because people know, like, okay, you're going to
right,
turn in a good product, I'm going to pay
right,
you a little bit more. And I know that there have been every single person that I've subbed for, I have not been the first sub
right,
for them.
right,
They have all
right.
been through some nightmare situations. And I'm like, well, can you tell me what went wrong so that I make
Mm-hmm.
sure that I don't do it again? So when
Yeah.
I'm talking to somebody that I'm not, like, things like, okay, regardless of how long it takes me to do this case, I am going to stay within your allowable, time estimate. Just things like that you would think are common sense. But I'm going to be honest, as a brand new LNC or as a newer LNC, stuff takes a long time. You
Yeah.
have to get your groove and and
Yeah.
figure out like how to make your work more efficient using the Adobe. What do I don't have to do a full chronology every time I do a merit review. Sometimes I felt like I did that, but it's like, okay, if this takes me
Right.
20 hours and only I can bill for 8 or 10,
Right.
I've got to find a way to make that more efficient too.
Right.
I can't go charging them 20 hours. Like, absolutely, that's
No.
crazy. We
Yeah.
can't. It's a 10-hour
Yeah.
job. You know
Yeah.
what I
But
mean?
if you
So
bill for 8 hours and it took you 20 hours, then there's this in between of like, okay, my time is still valuable.
right.
How do I make, yeah, no, I love that you share that. So I have one last question that kind of touches on what you just said, and I think it might be helpful. Um, and the fact that you've worked with many LNCs who have also worked with other subcontractors and who have stated the nightmares that they have had with those subcontractors, one being time, right? Billing time. Is there any other sort of like common thread amongst the nightmares that they experience that you could possibly share with everyone that would
And
be
very
helpful?
probably a universal complaint is that they are saying that people don't follow directions, that
Mm,
they don't give it in this format, or, they want every encounter to be included in the chrono and there's not every encounter,
mhm.
things like that. I haven't personally been told that about any of my work, but
Right.
like I said, everybody's a little bit different. And I guess
Yeah.
maybe because I'm used to working directly with so many different doctors and things, like
Yeah.
I can appreciate those differences.
Yeah.
And then I just think like an open communication line.
Yeah.
Um, one of the first nurses I subbed for, I know that I drove her crazy with my questions all the time about things. But at the same time, it's like when it was finally time to deliver the product, it really didn't leave a whole lot of confusion about what was expected and how it was, supposed
Right.
to be. And so I
Right.
also find it personally for myself with that ADHD is to check in,
Mhm.
with them and just say, this is kind of where I am. I'm a couple,
Mhm.
if I say it's going to take me 2 or 3 weeks, I might not even get to it for the first week because I've got other things going on. I work night
Right.
shifts. That's another whole story.
Right.
But
Right.
just to kind of check in with them. It isn't, again, it's not something that's been communicated with me that you need to do
Yeah.
that, but I find
Yeah.
personally that it helps me. But
It's
really,
been
the one of the
helpful.
biggest things is for sure the time, and then the following directions.
Yeah,
Yeah,
following directions. Yeah. I love that you shared that. And I guess if the directions aren't clear, then to ask for clarification, right? Would be the
just
same
like when
thing.
you're
It's
a
like
nurse,
maybe, yeah. Yeah, exactly.
like
To
on the
ask for
floor.
clarification. Go back to your foundation,
There
right?
are some doctors who are like, yeah, I can give this patient Tylenol. There's wait a
Right.
minute. They want you to call in for every little thing,
Right, 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 right. Well, I
especially working
appreciate
night
you
shift.
yeah, no, I know exactly. You don't want to wake
Do
them
not
up,
call
right?
me at 3 a.m.
Yeah,
Tylenol.
do not call me. Oh gosh.
Yes.
Um, well, I appreciate you sharing all of this knowledge and your story and how you got here. Again, that's like my favorite thing is to hear everybody's kind of background story. So thank you for being here. Where can everyone find you if they have any questions or to give you a high five or,
Uh-huh.
say hello?
I have accounts on, you know,
Yeah.
on Facebook. Clover is the name of my business, Clover Legal Nurse Consulting. I'm on LinkedIn as Clover. I think it's LNC, but everything they do is got a little visitor. Everything they do is it all is lowercase, so it looks like Clover Inc., but it's really an L, a
Yeah.
capital
Yeah.
L.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hang
Yeah.
on one second.
Okay.
So
And
Clover
that
Legal Nurse
stuff.
Consulting, yeah.
Okay.
I'm
Perfect.
on Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, and I have a website. It's not
Okay.
fabulous. Feel free to
All right.
just to pitch me some marketing
That's
hints,
awesome.
and
Yeah.
I'd love for
Yeah.
somebody to come swoop in and make my
Right.
social media marketing go away.
There you go. There you go. All right. And that information will be in the show notes so people can click on it and come
Perfect. Yeah.
find you and say hello. So thank you
Yeah.
so much for being here. And I can't wait for everyone to hear your story. So thank you.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I can be a little long-winded sometimes, so
Oh, it's
thanks for
great.
keeping me on task. And yeah, this
Absolutely.
was fun. So I
Perfect.
appreciate it.
All right.